Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Raglan sweater. It has some lovely 1x1 ribbing on the cuff and the hem. It has a cute little cat guy in the middle there. And I actually did duplicate stitch for the cat, but I do have instructions both in the video and in the pattern that I made of how, if you want to use color work to incorporate the cat, how to do that. So for this pattern, you're going to need your main yarn, which I used Drops Charisma yarn, and it's like the heather gray color 16. I used about 7.5 of these, and I'm size medium. And optional, but strongly recommend that you get some sort of nylon cord and elastic thread. Those just help make the neckline a lot more stretchy. So other than that, you can find the pattern itself on my Etsy, and let's get into it. So we start by casting on our desired number of stitches. Then we set our row counter to 0 and our tension dial to 4.5, and we're going to knit 16 rows. And now we are going to drop every other stitch down and knit it back up to make the ribbing. Make sure you always leave your last stitches on your machine. Okay, so you want to drop it all the way down to the first loop. Don't unravel the first loop. And then I like to just make it a little bigger and then stick my hook in like this and then just knit back up. Make sure every time you grab both your regular yarn and the mohair. And then you just keep going. And you just want to knit up for all of the stitches that you are dropping along the bottom of your ribbing here. And this is the same technique you'll be using for all of the ribbing for this pattern. So next we're going to knit 50 rows just as normal. I like to put the row counter back to 0, and we're going to change our dial to 5. Now we take 2 stitch markers and we're going to mark each ends of our panel. And then we're going to work on our first section of decreases. For extra small through large, you're going to knit 2 and then decrease 1 stitch on both sides of your panel, and you're going to repeat that 20 times. For extra large, you're going to knit 2, decrease 2 on each side, and then knit 2 more and decrease 1 on both sides. And you're only going to do that for a repeat of 10 times. And then for 2XL, you're going to knit 2 and then decrease 2 stitches on both sides. And you'll do that for a repeat of 20 times. So I just knit 2, and I'm going to decrease 1 on each side. And I'm going to pick up my 3 outer edge stitches and just move them over 1. So there's 1 stitch that overlaps here. And then we just move this other stitch out of work. And then we do the same thing on the right side. Now for the front panel, this is where you would start doing the neckline shaping and the additional decreases. But for the back panel, what we're going to do is we're just going to do the decreases. We're not doing any neck shaping along the back of the panel. And I always recommend you start with the back panel because you can kind of iron out some of the kinks and it won't show up as much as it would on the front panel. So this decrease section is chunked up quite a bit more than the other one. There's a few more steps. So for extra small, you're going to knit 2 and then decrease 1 on both sides. And this will be repeated 10 times. For small and 2XL, you're going to knit 2, decrease 1 on both sides, knit 2, decrease 2 on both sides, and you'll repeat that 5 times. And for medium, large, and extra large, you're going to knit 2 and decrease 2 on both sides. That was a lot of information really fast at you. I recommend you get the pattern to knit alongside the video, so it's a little easier to follow. And now that we're done with that step, we're just going to cast off with some contrasting waste yarn. As long as you can clearly see the difference, pretty much any color works. Alrighty. And I have my back panel. Next, we'll be making our front panel and doing the same stuff, except once we get to row 92, I'll show you how to do the neckline shaping. Alright, so we've knit the bottom 50 and the initial decrease section, and now we are going to work on the neckline shaping of the front panel. First step is to put the center 10 or 14 stitches on hold. This depends on size, so for extra small through medium, put the center 10, and then for large through 2XL, put the center 14. Okay, so here are my stitches. I'm just going to put the center 10. So I find 0, and then I go 5 on each side. 4, 5. And we also want to make sure that our carriage is in hold. So I'm just gonna set that to hold. So we're gonna start with our right side shaping. So that means all of these stitches on the left get put out into hold. So our carriage is on the right, it's on hold. We want to set our row counter back to 0. And I'm knitting a medium, so I'm going to repeat these steps 10 times. I'm going to knit 1 row, wrap my yarn under the center collar needle, and this will help preventing a hole from forming. I'm going to knit back, and then I'm going to locate this 1 stitch to the right of the center and put this on hold. And then I decrease 2 on my right side. Oop. And I'm going to repeat that a total of 10 times. And the other sizes are all the same. You're going to knit 1, wrap that around here, put 1 out in the middle. The only difference between the sizes for this section is how many decreases you're doing on the right section here, and also how many center needles you put out and hold to begin with. So I'll show you one more time. Knit, wrap, knit back, put this guy on hold. You might want to put a weight here because you'll be making more and more rows up here, and there's going to be a little bit of a weird tension, so having a weight here helps. And then decrease tip. So on your last row here, you might need to do the decrease before you put the stitches on hold, just because, you know, you might push this guy out and realize you don't have any room to move your stitches. So I'm just going to take my right two, sorry, and then decrease one, struggling, and decrease two. All right, so now you are done with your right side. And now you just repeat everything on the left side. So I'm going to cut my working yarn, leaving enough so it doesn't immediately unravel. About that much should be fine. And I'm going to move my carriage over to the left. Now we want to make sure that our center 10 stays on hold, so find the 0 again, and then 5 out on each side is here and here. And we want all of these right stitches to stay in hold too. So everything to the left of your 10 stitches, or 14, if you're knitting a large through 2XL, will need to be put back into work. And the best way to do that is manually. So just grab your transfer tool and we'll put all these back into work. Whoa. And you also want to put these right ones that we knit but didn't necessarily put on hold back out into hold, because we don't want to knit any of those in our next section. So now just take a new strand of yarn and do what we did before with our right side. We are going to knit, wrap, knit back, put one on hold, decrease two. This is how I prefer to do my double decreases, at least for a simple decrease. Alrighty, and there we have it. We have finished the front panel. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut our working yarn like we did last time. And we are going to use some waste yarn and put our carriage back onto our regular settings and cast off with at least 4. I usually do a couple more rows of waste yarn. Brava! And I'll show you what it looks like real quick on the mannequin. Alrighty, so here she is. As you can see, she's a bit stiff. That's fine, it'll block out and get nice and drapey. So here are our 2 stitch markers that we added, and these will be combined, and then this bottom section here will be seamed together all the way down. And this is where our sleeve will be. So for the next steps, we are going to make one sleeve twice for each side, obviously, and then we just seam those together and you're all set. So I've decided for this to just duplicate stitch over this to add the little motif that I want to do. But if you want to add the motif beforehand, like during the knitting process, then the way to find what row number you want to start on is by you take the number of the pattern that you have, you add it to 30, and then you subtract 110 minus that value, and that's the row number you start on, which will kind of let it sit. I have some stitch markers here to help me. My little motif would have sat right here. So that calculation helps it sit right in the center chest region So to make our sleeves, we are going to knit them top down. So the first step is to cast on our desired number amount with a waste yarn cast on. And then we just take our yarn and we're going to knit 2 rows. And then we're going to make 1 increase on each side. So just move 3 stitches over. Pick up the little purl bump of the stitch next to it. And do the same on the left side. Purl bump. And we're going to repeat this pattern of knitting 2, increase 1 on both sides for a total of 30 repeats or until your row counter equals 60. Now that we're on row 60, we're going to add a stitch marker to each side of our panel. And now we're going to repeat a pattern for decreases, and the amount of times you repeat this pattern will depend on the size of the sweater you're knitting. So if you're knitting an extra small, medium, extra large, or 2XL, you're going to repeat the pattern 14 times. If you're knitting a small, you're going to repeat it 16 times, and if you're knitting a large, you're going to repeat it 12 times. The pattern we're repeating is we're going to knit 4 and then decrease 1 on both sides. The only difference between the patterns is for large, you're going to knit 4 and decrease 2 on both sides. And I'm just using a simple decrease here. In the pattern provided, there's also instructions for a 2-step decrease, which is slightly more complicated and achieves a little bit of a more interesting or cleaner finish. But if you don't want to do that and if you just want to do a simple decrease, I find the simple decrease still looks quite nice. So since I'm doing a medium, I'm going to repeat this pattern until I get to RC equals 116. Now that I've finished with my decreases, I'm going to knit just as normal until my row counter equals 150 or until your desired sleeve length. Keep in mind that we are going to add 16 rows of ribbing to this after this section of just regular knitting. And now we are going to cast off with waste yarn and then pick it right back up and put it back on our stitches. And the reason we're doing that is because when we drop our stitches for the ribbing, that waste yarn will give us a stopping point to keep the drop stitches from going any farther. Set your row counter to 4.5 and we are going to knit 16 rows just as normal. Alrighty, and now we are just going to drop every other stitch down just like we did for the cast on, and we are going to knit them back up to create our ribbing. And just like last time, make sure that you don't drop your last stitch on either side of your ribbing. That will just cause your panel to get weird. So make sure, even if it's weird, even if you end up with 2 stitches, just keep them both up like this. And now we just finished the final cast off. And now our final step is knitting the collar. So this is the last thing we'll actually knit before you want to seam everything together. If you're having a hard time fitting all of your stitches onto one machine, you can always knit in sections and then just seam them up later. So as long as you leave the edge stitches open and you don't drop those later, you'll be golden. So as you can see, we have everything wrong side facing here. You literally just pick up all the stitches where we either cast on with the sleeves or we cast off with the back and the front panels. You just pick them all up and we're going to knit them for our collar. So I like to make sure my row counter is at 0, my tension dial is at 4.5, and we're going to knit 6 rows just as normal. Okay, great. This is always a good point to just take a look at all your stitches, make sure nothing dropped. Sometimes the in-between zones, in between your panels, can get a little tricky and you might drop stitches, so just keep an eye on that. It looks like everything's good, so now we're going to move on to the next step, which is changing our tension dial from 4.5 to 6 and knitting 1. This is just our turning row, which will help the collar lay more flat. Okie dokie. Now we change our tension dial back to 4.5 and we knit 6 more rows. Your row counter should say 13 on it. And now we're going to do what we did with the rest of the knitting, which is drop every other stitch and knit it back up just as normal. Now that the ribbing is done, we're just going to pick up these stitches again, which will mean that we fold this over and then we cast off. You can cast off just using your regular yarn, or you can use your regular yarn plus some elastic thread, which will help your collar keep its shape for a lot longer. And now we just finished the final cast off. Alright, and then just cut your working yarn with enough to weave in later. Pull through on this last stitch here. And then pop your project off the machine. And voila, you have your ribbing. When you take off this section, just be careful because it's really easy to miss stitches and sometimes they will drop here. So just be very aware when you are unraveling your waste yarn. And now you just seam it up, block it, and you're all set. So as you're seaming along your edge here, once this stitch marker gets to this stitch marker, that's how you know this section connects. And then the rest of this will connect like that, and this section seams all together like that, just like a regular sleeve tube. There you go. And then it also connects to the other side with its stitch markers as well. So just seam up your panel and then we're going to block it and then we'll be all set. Alrighty, so I've finished seaming this guy all together. The bottom likes to flip up a little bit. I strongly recommend when you are seaming together the collar to insert a bit of elastic, because like when you fold this over, it creates basically a tube and you can just fit some nylon cord in there. Hold on, let me... Tool. And so I've just kind of put some elastic in here, and it might be a little too snug, but you can see just how much stretch this bad boy has. So The good thing is if it's too snug, you can always just cut it and seam it through there and tie it again. And then just tuck the ends into the little like tube of the collar. So I just wanted to show you a real quick before blocking and after blocking. I haven't put the like little cat guy that I'm gonna put on here yet, because if you do it before you block, you might end up with like a scrunched area because you'll be matching the tension of your sweater before blocking. So it will be tighter than your finished piece. So I always recommend blocking first and then doing any duplicate stitch that you're gonna do. So here it is on me before blocking. Super weird feeling. Very, like, you can see how bunched up it is right here, and like it's kind of a little too short. It just doesn't like lay flat. My sleeves are a little too short, but after it blocks, like I guarantee you, it's gonna look so much better. So beauty of blocking, man. By the way, if you guys are curious, this is how I block my sweaters. Straight up just using my sink. I use the side that we don't have the garbage disposal on, just in case. And I just let it sit in here for like an hour, more most of the time because I just forget that it's there. And I use a combo of like regular detergent, which like low-key is kind of a no-no, and this like wool special detergent. Also, not an ad, but I find that this soap, I've actually used up the whole thing and now it's just full of water because I'll put water in it and I shake it around, try to get every last drop, is really nice. It kind of makes my like finished pieces like a little softer and it helps them smell good. I found, and I have no idea how close the camera is, hopefully I don't look super zoomed in and all you see is my nose, but I've found that sometimes knit pieces, especially like wool, will kind of smell like wet dog after you've washed it. So using this kind of soap, or like literally any wool wash that has like eucalyptus, or in this case like tea tree oil, helps kind of like tamp down the smell a little bit and not make it so intense. So that's just my 2 cents there. So she lays way nicer. Flowy, not stiff like before. The hemline doesn't roll up anymore and it sits like pretty much exactly where I wanted it to. I think that if I wanted, I could have like stretched it out more so that it would be even longer, but I didn't really pull on it too hard. The wrists, like the sleeve length is like perfect. I like it to lay just like barely touching my palm of my hand. That's my preference. So, blocking saves lives, dude. It's straight up crazy. Always works so well, especially with wool or other mammal fibers. It can be kind of hard to record in a small zone sometimes. So, yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. And I think the cat looks super cute, especially like I gave it fuzzy scrap yarn, which kind of gives it like a little less definition and it makes it kind of look like a cat, which I think is fun. So yeah, that is the sweater after it's finished. I made some really minor tweaks to the overall pattern based on my like final fit. Like for example, this is very stretchy and it's like a little too stretchy, like it's a little too wide. So I, in the final pattern, shortened the amount of stitches you'll cast on for your sleeves here. And what that will do is it will allow this to sit a little bit tighter on the neck, which won't like, I think it will just help the final fit a little better. So your pattern is gonna look even nicer than mine does. So I hope you guys liked the tutorial and the pattern and all that stuff. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to answer questions and often do answer questions in the comments. Let me know if there's any other kind of patterns that you want to see. I'm really kind of liking this new upload schedule of one like talking video where I like explain something a month and then I just post my pattern design like as I finish them, because the complexity of those makes the video length take such different amount of time. Like this took me 2 months from like very start to very end, And this was a pretty simple one. So it can really just vary. So I like that I can upload consistently with this new pattern. So that basically what I'm trying to say is if you have ideas, I can entertain those and like write them down and maybe make a pattern. So if you guys want to buy the pattern, it's available on my Etsy. And if you want to see me or watch any of my other videos, you can go ahead and like and subscribe, and that way you can see me more often. Just a really quick thank you to everybody for getting me to 2,000 subscribers. It feels a little weird to say thank you because like I see so many people with huge like accounts, you know, but realistically 2,000 is a lot of people. Like imagine seeing 2,000 people in one room. That's a lot of people to teach to or present to or whatever. So yeah, I want to celebrate all of the wins, small wins, big wins, and this is a big win for me. So thank you guys, and I hope to see you around more often. Bye. Oh my god, my mic has been upside down this whole time, and I really hope that it picked up the audio okay.